In this video, I'm going over the financial benefits of working in France. While these are in fact financial benefits, they could add a lot to your mental state of being. I'm an Indian expat who moved to France for his masters and then did a couple of internships before finding myself a permanent job here in Paris. This video is based on tens of conversations I've had with my seniors to better organize my personal finances. Here is an exhaustive list of financial benefits of working in France. Let's jump straight in with comparative pay. Certainly, USA pay is better than France. This is general information, right? I would disagree. It's no surprise that entry-level jobs in India are not that well paid. After doing 4 years of mechanical engineering in India, my entry-level job as a maintenance engineer in Taloja, Navi Mumbai was not enough to pay for my rent close by in Navi Mumbai. I was depending completely on my parents for rent back then, and this is quite a known fact in India, where workers travel so many hours to get to work. Contrasting that to my first job here in France, where I was making sandwiches for 4 hours a day during weekdays, and I did not work in the weekends. I made about 900 something euros every month. This is back when rents in Lille for a shared apartment was somewhere between 350 and 450 euros. That's what I was paying for rent, and I was not traveling hours to get to work. This job in Lille did not need me to have an engineering degree. My French was not that flawless, and I did not have to negotiate the salary either. It was just the running rate back then. For my internship itself, which needed my master's degree, and for my full-term job later, it paid me much more than the 960 euros I was making back then. I did not pay taxes on that 960 euros either, so all of that money was really take-home salary. And I was not working extremely hard. This was 4 hours a day and not the weekends, right? Now, I do realize I'm speaking from a position of privilege. Many manual jobs in France are not that well paid. Some of them don't even have proper paperwork. That, of course, still happens. But what I'm trying to expose over here is that the system itself benefits the worker. In India, for a similar job, the business would take the lion's share. But here in France, I did not have to fight for it, but the workers take the lion's share of that income. Now, I know that comparing two countries based on the experience of one person is a little difficult to stomach, but I invite you to look at these numbers objectively. These rules were set up after much protesting, and I remember when I was working in the sandwich bar back then, there was this request to put up cameras inside the kitchen to see what we were doing on the daily. The workers denied, and the managers didn't have much say. If the managers forced it out, I'm sure there would have been a protest. So there is that kind of dignity that goes with the worker is king in France, and that is definitely true. I've experienced that. So for junior roles and jobs that do not need a degree, France pays way better than India. Then there is the US of A. In order to place USA on the spectrum, I'll have to unveil the next 4 points, so please bear with me. Now, if you speak to someone who's lived in France for a couple of years, they'll tell you that the social security was much better before than it is today. But for me, who pays social security charges every month from my payslip before the tax is deducted, I must say, when I need it, it works. I've taken to running lately and I've hurt my knees. I've had a root canal treatment done in France and another cavity fixed, and I didn't pay a dime for it. Now every month, Uncle Sam, or what is the French equivalent of Uncle Sam? The French government takes away this cotisation sécurité sociale every month, and I don't see that anyway. But even when I was a student and I did not pay these social security charges, even then when I had need for these things, it did work out. My first night in Lille, I broke my leg and I was in excruciating pain. I did not have Wi-Fi or a SIM card. I just pulled out my phone, which had like 3% battery, and I dialed 911. And in 7 minutes, the pompier, the ambulance guys were in my bedroom. They took me to the hospital in an ambulance. They treated me and brought me back home. And throughout this whole episode, they did not ask me for a payment. That request came later, and the insurance did cover all of it, the travel insurance of the time. But the fact that they would do all of this stuff without asking me to pay for it exposes the reality that there is a robust system that is already set up. I can be nothing but grateful for this. The mutuelle or complémentaire de santé, this depends on the company that you work with. With my company, the mutual is pretty great. I got a pair of reading glasses for my computer and a pair of sunglasses as well, and I paid 50 euros for both. These are expensive instruments. My sunglasses also have power for when I'm driving and I can't see the boards clearly, which are far away. And this, of course, is not the social security itself, it is the mutual, but this is in place. I'm very grateful for that. As a 20-something-year-old, this may not be a big deal. The light is shifting. As a 20-something-year-old, this may not be really much of a big deal, but as you get older and you have these physical ailments, it's good to know that you don't have to worry about it. I must admit that sometimes it's difficult to find a doctor because everyone just rushes into a doctor when there is an issue. This is also true, but with a little bit of patience, I've seen the dermatologist. During the COVID time, I got my vaccines. All of this stuff, it does work. and it's great. Now, this next category helps you to take a step back and ask yourself if you really like your job. The CPF, or compte personnel de formation. I thought it was professional for all this while. It's not. It's compte personnel de formation. This requires your employer to put in 500 euros every year into a certain account that you can use for any kind of training. Now, since this is a personal account, you have your own username and password, and your employee cannot see what kind of trainings you're taking. You can take trainings on Photoshop, on interior design, on video making, digital marketing, web design, what have you. Whatever you're interested in, you can spend this money on that. You can also use it to get your driver's license. In France, the driver's license are really expensive, and you can use this money for that. Now, this is absolute fire for a proactive employee who knows what he wants. Or even if he doesn't know what he wants, he can take a step back and try something else. The RTT, or réduction de temps de travail, is to reduce the number of hours you're working, basically that. 35 hours a week, and if you're doing a little more than that, then you can take these RTT days off. For a corporate job, you're looking at something like 10 days a year. That's above the national holidays and paid holidays that you can already take. This RTT thing is another fruit of fighting for the employee rights, and they actually plotted how many hours an employee puts in several disciplines in yearly hours. They plotted this for several countries, and their focus was to reduce it. Now, these benefits come to a worker here in France, even if you're not French, after years of to and fro with the government asking them to set this up as a rule. Now, you also get arrêt maladie. This is for when you're sick and you can't work. You have to inform them within 48 hours of falling sick, and then they take care of a part of your income. So if you take a couple of weeks, months off because you're incapable of working, you don't spend your holidays and you don't go on loss of. Depending on how long you've already worked, they'll pay a smaller or larger fraction of your salary. But it's really interesting to notice that you don't go under loss of pay or you don't lose your holidays. Speaking of which, France gives you quite a lot of holidays per year. That's a big number. You don't get that in USA. If you don't take these holidays in the current year, there is this CET thing, COT, where you can put that into your retirement or you can encash it the following year. Finally, you have the chômage. So if you worked for 6 months over the last 2 years, then you get up to 75% of your salary if you lose your job. There are definitely conditions and limits to this, but it definitely works. I've had friends who lost their job because the company went bankrupt, and many of these other reasons when it's not really employees' fault. And in this case, the chômage does work. People do get helped by the government. Knowing that all of these things exist, it just takes the weight off of your mind when you're thinking about your work. You're not in that much pressure to stay in that same job because you have to pay your paychecks. You have the possibility to switch, to pivot, and if you have health ailment, you're covered. That's really good to know. It helps you detach from the pressures of work and think about other stuff like friendship, like leisure, like fitness, and cooking healthy food. For me, they help me to get to know myself better. I'm not forced to work, and I'm sufficiently informed about what I would like to do for work if I don't like my job. Specifically for foreigners who come to study here in France, there is the APL, the APS visa, which gives you a year to look for a job. And speaking about the APL, Caisse d'allocation familiale or aide pour logement, this thing is for students or for people who are not making enough money to afford a decent living. So a part of the rent that you cannot pay, the government will pay through this APL thing. You just need to show where you're trying to stay. You can't be living in the second arrondissement of Paris, having a job that cannot pay for it. That's not it. But for people who are really in need, whether or not you're French, the government helps you to pay your rent. For the first 2 years when I was a student here in France, I did not have an income. The sandwich bar thing happened after I finished my school, before I was finding a job. But back then, the APL helped me with my rent. That was definitely welcome in a time when I was not making money. About this getting to know yourself thing, I will definitely touch on it in a later video. But if you're a student who moved here to France, then the Getting to Know Yourself playlist on my channel will definitely help you get started. These exercises help me to figure out where I would fit ideally, professionally speaking, here in France. Let's switch gears to retirement benefits. Just like the Provident Fund in India, France also has these retirement funds which are backed by the government. Your company and yourself, you put money into it for your benefit, and the government provides tax benefits. If you buy an iPhone in USA and then the same iPhone in France, the one in France was more expensive, while China is closer. What gives? I've heard my French friends say that this is because we invest money into the retirement funds of people who are working for the logistics of this iPhone after it has touched French soil. I don't know for sure if that is what's driving up the price of the phone here in France, but what I do know for sure is the HR department in my current company and the previous company informed me about all of these retirement funds that I have to choose between. You can't help to notice that there's been an intention to facilitate the worker. In France, it's called called the PER, and it is similar to the American IRA with some differences. There are specifics all over the place, but the general idea is when you put money into this specific account, then your company matches it to a certain extent and the government gives you tax benefits on it. Check out this website by the French government that talks about the PER among other mechanisms. I've got a translated copy of this in my website if you don't speak the financial French too well. This list will also be a part of my version 2 of Fit in France, this free handbook that I created a couple of weeks ago. It's a one-stop shop for all the things I've learned since I moved to France about making a living here. I'd really like to talk to you guys about the PEE, the CET. I already spoke to you about the CET and the Assurance Vie, but these things are rather crystal clear on the government's website, and if you don't understand it, there's that English version. The link is in the description. Alright, intéressement et participation. I did not know about this until like 2 years of me working in France. I hope that you don't have to make this mistake. In the first company that I worked, I had no idea that I have this benefit. The company didn't tell me at first, but after I left the company like a year later, they contacted me and told me, we owe you this money, and they just sent it to me. This participation is a mandatory profit sharing thing that the company has to give you when they reach a certain size and make a certain amount of money. The intéressement, however, is not mandatory. Knowing that it's not mandatory and that some companies offer it, it helps you make a more informed choice where you're financially more better off. At the company that I work at right now, at L'Oréal, the intéressement plus participation is a very handsome amount you take out every year. The company just gives it to you, and you can do all sorts of things with this money. This is different from buying shares in the company, which also comes at a discount. That's another thing that the company gives you. Or you can invest in shares in small and medium-sized companies in an index portfolio, and you have tax benefits on that. In fact, the tax benefits, and I'm sorry, that was the previous chapter. The tax benefits are so awesome in France. Like if you have a dog, the dog walks are taken care of. When you need domestic help, there is a tax benefit for that. When you have kids, you have a list of tax benefits for kids. If you're working in France, take a second to read this whole list from that website I spoke to you about. The English version, like I said, is on my website. Revenons à nos moutons. Intéressement, participation, and the discounted stocks and shares. The stocks and share prices in our company are so well organized where you can choose to buy discounted stocks and shares at your company. L'Oréal stocks and shares are extremely stable and they are constantly going up, but you can buy it at a discounted rate, and when you buy 10, they give you 2 more for free. In order to pay that money in, you don't even have to cough up the money immediately. You can just pay it over the next 12 months from your salary. So you get the shares into your account right now at the price today, then the discount, those 2 discounts I spoke to you about, and then over the next 12 months, 1/12 will be taken out of every monthly salary. So you don't really feel the pinch. What's more is this money that I spoke to you about from the intéressement and the participation, this yearly amount that comes around April, May time. This money you can also invest in shares, among other investments. Our intéressement and participation at L'Oréal is handled by Amundi, and they have so much to read and learn about when it comes to financial planning for your retirement. There is a hefty amount of tax that one pays to pull this money out of the account and use it. But there are exemptions, like when you're buying your first house in France, then you can take that money out even before the 5 years. Or if you have a death in the family, it's your first wedding, then you can take this money out even before the 5 years and not pay taxes on it. So these conditions are really great. Another thing that's specific to my company itself is when you have a bank account with the company's bank, BNP is our bank, you can borrow a hefty amount of money for a personal loan. I'm sure these kind of benefits exist in India too, but the fact that they're there over here gives you an idea of how liquid money is in France. Money is cheaper in France than it is in India. You can see that in rates of interest when you borrow money. The mortgage rates are much lower, even despite the energy crisis in France, relative to India, where I paid a bigger rate of interest for my education loan. Many education loans in France are next to free. That brings us to the last chapter of this video, where we'll talk a little more about taxes. If there are 2 things that are certain in life, that is death and taxes. In France, however, you can get back some of this tax money that you paid to the government. Oh, what a bleak way to talk about money. In order to take the money back from the government, this money that you would never see otherwise, you need to help the government reach some of its goals. Building social housing, for instance, is one of these goals that the government has, and if you help the government with that, then they'll give you tax benefits. So when you buy a house in France and you don't have the money for it, you take a debt like in every other country, and you have a monthly EMI for a period of time. Pretty classic so far. The rate of interest is different in different countries. France's rate of interest is pretty great. But I'd like to talk to you about the Loi Pinel. A part of the EMI is paid by you from your pocket. The other part of the EMI is paid from your income taxes. So you just need to be working in France in order to benefit from this. This income tax you would not see otherwise. Since it's not a personal house, but it is social housing, so the last part of the EMI is paid by the guy who needs a house, who's living in your house. That rent goes into the EMI. So in other words, for this house that you will own in the near future, you only pay a fraction of the EMI, but at the end of it, the house is yours. There are a bunch of these mechanisms and a couple of other reductions where you can get your tax money back, like when you invest in solar panels or put money in a charity. This list as well you'll find in the version 2 of my free handbook. Now, on the spectrum of India to France, I would place USA somewhere about here. Although you make lesser money per month in France relative to USA for the same job, the amount of peace of mind you get from all of these stuff that I've spoken to you during this video, it increases your quality of life today and right now, and that is awesome. While I enjoy everything that America comes up with, their music, their movies, their technology, France for me is the best of both worlds, where I have all of this peace of mind. I invest all of this money into my retirement benefits. I have so many vacation days off, and I have the possibility to train myself and change my job if I don't like my current job. But if I'm an ambitious person who wants to make a product that sells in USA, I can do that here in France because I have the time for it. The flip side, however, is not true. If I was working in America, I would probably be working harder than in France. I would probably be having lesser days off than I have here in France, but I would be making a little more money for that. But if anything goes wrong with my health, all of that money I made can immediately come down to naught looking at the prices for healthcare in USA. Look, I'm not saying everybody should pack their bags and move to France, but if you're on the fence about moving to France, here you have an exhaustive list of the 6 benefits of moving to France. In current news, the French president visited India a couple of months ago, and he mentioned that he was looking for more skilled labor from India moving to France. If you're on the fence, then it's good for you to know that these benefits are yours to take if you move to France for work. If you're interested to move to France as a student, I've made a bunch of videos on my channel about that. About the amount of money itself it takes to be a student here in France. I made a specific one that might interest you. This is about as much as I know currently about personal finances and finances in France. If this video was helpful, then please support my work by hitting a thumbs up on this video. It really helps my channel out. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you next week.